page.
Okay. Good morning, Alok. Alok is from Bernard Schulte, Fleet Director, Hong Kong. Good morning and welcome.
Very good morning to all.
Good morning, Alok sir जी किधर हैं? Face नहीं दिख रहा है.
Good morning, Kamlesh. Nice to see you after a long time.
After a long time, sir. How are you, sir?
Yeah, good.
Sir, look very young now.
I look young.
Yeah, looking young.
Good morning, Michael. Michael from London has joined. Good morning.
Good morning, Debashis. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah,
Good morning.
Good morning, Sunil. Sunil has joined from Cyprus. He's the Fleet Director of Fleet Management.
Yeah.
From Cyprus. Hi, can you see me, Sunil?
Yeah, good morning, Debasis. Great to see you after a long time.
Yes,
See that
good,
you are
good,
keeping
good.
well.
Hi guys, can I invite my brother? He's heading Barclay IT head. Now he's going to join HDFC. He'll be heading HDFC technical head. Is it
Please,
okay?
please.
Should I invite him?
Please
Yes,
invite. Please invite.
I'm
Please
inviting
invite.
him.
We have Sean here as well now.
Let's see. Sean.
Hi,
There he
Satya.
is.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning,
Satya,
Sean.
morning.
Sean from London.
Morning.
Satya, good morning.
10 मिनट. मैं भेजा हूँ मेरा कमेटी के सब सीनियर हैं पटनायक साहब जो कंपनी खोले सिक्योरिटी साइबर सिक्योरिटी में going to discuss.
Well, there. I could see Bishwadeep Banerjee. I can't see you. Welcome, Bishwadeep Banerjee, the Director of American Bureau of Shipping.
Yeah, hello.
Hi,
How are you?
Bishwadeep. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
He's the ABS Director now. He's working we are colleagues in ABS. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Are you in your office or are you at home?
Yeah, it's an office. So, but
Just waiting for people to connect up. Just those.
Hello everyone. We are about to start our webinar. I request all attendees to please mute the speakers. Good morning everyone and welcome to today's webinar on cyber risk management in ISM code, jointly organized by Amon Board, Seed Maritime UK and Laniaka Secure Works. We thank you all for joining us today amidst your hectic schedules. I'm Kiran, your moderator for today's session. I'm a superintendent. I worked with various prominent shipping companies during my sea career. My shore-based experience mainly lies as a superintendent for operations and technical management for FML Ship Management Cyprus. Presently, I'm pursuing Masters in Trade and Finance from Cass Business School at London. Our first presenter for today is Mr. Debashish Majumdar, the Chief Executive Officer of Seed Maritime UK. Debashish's career spans for more than 35 years. In this extensive experience, he assumed responsibilities as a chief engineer, ABS class surveyor, UK Port State Inspector, ISM, ISPS, MLC, and ISO 9000 14000 lead auditor. He has held prestigious and challenging positions as the head of the ISM for UK, head of UK Ship Register. Debashish had a stint as a CEO and International Register of Ships at St. Kitts and Nevis, a Caribbean flag. Debashish received 3 performance awards with cash prizes and long service award from Maritime and Coast Guard Agency UK. Debashish has done Bachelor of Marine Engineering from DMIT Kolkata in 1983. He actively supports vessels, managers, and vessel owners with surveys and audits to raise their safety standards worldwide and assists with statutory and regulatory compliance. In addition, he delivers training to office-based technical staff and vessel senior officers. The FBI director, Mr. Robert Mueller, once said there are 2 types of companies, those who have been hacked and those who will be hacked. And apparently it is becoming true. In today's webinar, Mr. Debashish will speak about cyber risk management within shipping industry in context of ISM code. This session will be an interactive one where Debashish will ask some questions to the audience. Audience can answer in chat. We will have a question and answer session after his presentation. You can also send your questions in the chat format from your devices. We will play a short profile video of Mr. Debashish now.
Thank you, Kiran, for the wonderful introduction, but too long video, I believe. But anyway, good morning, UK. United Kingdom. Good afternoon, Dubai and India.
Good afternoon,
And good
sir.
evening, Singapore. So I am speaking here live from the UK, and so is Kiran from London. Our next speaker, Limina, she is live from India, and Amon, board director and organizing team, are live from Singapore. So I'm so happy to see all of you here amidst a busy schedule, and we are here to discuss some maritime cyber risk management, which has become part of ISM. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I have been in a regulatory role for the last 25 years with class and flag state. Now, my main objective is after the end of, I request you to be till the end of the webinar, and you take home at least 5 to 10 new things which you didn't know. So that is my goal, my objective, if I can achieve that. So now, to go into this, I will be discussing about the cybersecurity. And now, when we come to cybersecurity, we see in the website everywhere a lot of things about cybersecurity. Now, why the cybersecurity has become so important? Why? Can I have the slide, please, Mr. Srinivas? The cybersecurity has become very important today because industry is losing money. As we know, the shipping, whenever a ship or a ship owner or a company loses money, things become very important and scary. For example, if a ship is detained or arrested, thousands of dollars are losses, PSC becomes important. Port State Control becomes very important. Similarly, if a ship pollutes and discharges oil, millions of dollars are fined. MARPOL becomes important. And now, similarly, it is time for the cybersecurity. Okay, can we have the slide, please? Yes. Now, if you go and see in the slide, in the cybersecurity, it has been estimated $6 trillion by 2021. This is the loss which has been predicted. So what I'm trying to say, it has become important now. Now in shipping, it has become important because cybersecurity damages and is a lot of money and financial losses to companies. Okay, so I agree to what Kiran said as a quote in the beginning. Like it is, there are two types of companies. One is hacked and the other one to be hacked. Now I'll be going with some basic things of cybersecurity. So, right, let me get these things on. So before we go through, I have a question for you. Now, if you have any answer, you can put it in the chat, or you can answer by unmuting a microphone. That can anyone in the audience tell me where I can find the exact guidelines of marine cybersecurity management issued by IMO, which we have to follow? Where can we find? Anybody? I got an answer here, SOLAS website. No, that's not quite correct. Anybody else? Where? In circular. Yeah, you have certain things in IMO circular, but you don't have the full things written down, what you have to follow, what are the guidances that has to be done. Flag state classification, I'm getting a lot of answers. Yes, that's the one. I got another answer from Subrata Das. Congratulations, in ISM code. Correct. The ISM code, page 78 of the ISM code, talks about cybersecurity, exactly what has to be done by the companies. Now, the second question comes in my mind, that what is the current version of the ISM code? Anybody? Which is the current version? Because if you have an old version of the ISM code, you won't have cybersecurity in it. So it is very important that in your ship and everywhere it is. Subrata Das says 2015, no. There's another gentleman saying June 2020, no. Okay, the current, this is very important because when I audit even big shipping companies and big ships, cruise ships, I found they have an old version on the bridge. Now this is if you have the old version, you will miss out cybersecurity totally. So now this thing is, can we have the slide, please? The next slide, which will show you which is the current edition from this. Yes, okay. It is the 2018 edition. The 2018 edition is the current edition. Now, just to give you a small, we are all doing ISM for 15 years now. So in 2002, the code was 39 pages, ISM code. And now it is 84 pages. The codes in ISM, the number of clauses did not increase. But why it is double the size now? Just take a look and then you will come to know why this, because there are 2 new chapters have added, and that has made the ISM code a bit thicker. So today I'm going to focus on the regulatory and the mandatory requirements of maritime risk management. And our next speaker, Ms. Lumina, who's an expert consultant in cyber crimes and an expert in hacking, sorry, not hacking, anti-hacking, beg your pardon, will give some of political instances of the crime and how to safeguard them. So things are going to be interesting. I will talk about what you should do, and she will talk to you how it is hacked, how the hackers are hacking, and how your whole thing, whatever the damages are caused. So you have to wait for those interesting things. She's got some couple of slides, and she will show you something like that. Now, who can tell me, by IMO addressing the cybersec management of the system, what is the deadline? What is the deadline given by IMO that you should have a cyber system management plan on your SMS manual in ISM? Anybody? Somebody said June, January 2021. Yes, who's this? January 2021. Yes, that is the thing. Can I have the next slide, please? Just to know, so that I'm not talking for myself, I'm just bringing evidence. This is a scanned copy from the ISM code. You can see that, and it says that, I'll read it to you, that ensure that cyber risks are appropriately addressed in the safety management system no later than the first annual verification of the company's DOC after 1st January 2021. Some small companies are still not aware of this. And after 2021, on your first DOC, the auditor will expect to have your full cyber management plan in your manuals and your risk analysis, because it is a big risk, so it has to be identified risk. So if you go to ISM 1.1.1.2, it says to identify risk and safeguard it. So this is a major risk that should be reflecting in your risk analysis report. Now, when we come to maritime, cyber maritime risks, we heard about cyber security all over the world in every company. Now, today I'm going to talk about the maritime risk, which refers to measure extent which a technology asset could be threatened by a political circumstances or event, which can result in shipping-related operational safety and security failures. So what will happen as a consequence? Information systems being corrupted, lost, or compromised. So now the cyber risk management. Now, what does the cyber risk management means? The cyber risk management, this is what I'm telling you is what we have to do. A lot of companies have already done it, but I'm just going to, aid my word. And the cyber risk management is the process of identifying the risk, analyzing the risk, assessing the risk, and communicating a cyber-related risk by accepting, avoiding, transferring, or mitigating it to any acceptable level, considering cost and benefit actions taken to the stakeholders. Now, these are the major things which cybersec management and you have to take care of, right? I'll come into some of the details, what you have to do. Now, we have what? And on board now we are all mariners, we are all related to the shipping. We have the ISM code on, right, which we follow. We have the ISPS code. We have the code for safe working and practices. We have the IMDG code, which is the dangerous goods. Now, is there a code for cybersecurity? Can anybody from the audience let me know, yes or no, is there a code for cybersecurity? Somebody says no, I get some answers. Somebody says yes. So yeah, that sort of a thing. It's a mixture of a thing. Mr. Sam Srikanta Mukherjee says yes. Okay, so well, I'll go through it. The main thing is the cybersecurity code is there is no code from the IMO as yet. There's no code from the IMO yet, but there is a code. Now, the Department of Transport in the United Kingdom, which we Rob here, a lot of MCA people are here on the show. You're all under the Department of Transport. They have issued a code. Can I have the slide, please? So it will show you a code. Yes. Now, if you see the code, this is the code of practice for cyber security for ships. So if you have not known, this is on the website. Go and read it. You will get everything what a shipping company needs to do for the code of practice. If you see it is by the Department of Transport in consultation with IET. Now, IET, you know, it's Institute of Engineering and Technology. So if you did not know this, now you know this by attending this webinar, that there is a code. Look it up and read it. It's a thick code. Now, what is cybersecurity? When you come to define, if anybody tells you, define cybersecurity, what are you going to say? Now, cybersecurity can be defined as collection of tools, policies, security concepts, security safeguards, guidelines, risk management approach, actions, security training, best practices, assurance technologies that can be used to protect the cyber environment of the organization, the shipping company and the ships, and the user assets, that is the ships, are protected. That is what the cybersecurity for marine means. Okay. Now, coming to some terminology. Here, when we have all the people who are involved in cybersecurity, they have got some terminology with them, but today I'm going to go, but if you're working with cybersecurity, there are some terminologies you must know. So if you don't know, I will go through some of them, and those people know, just to have this thing. Have you heard of the term called CIA triad? CIA triad. For mariners, many mariners, it'll be a new thing. What is the CIA triad? So we as common operators, we do not know these terms. But when you go deep into cybersecurity, you got to know them. Now, CIA triad, C is for confidentiality, I is for integrity, and A is for availability. So the CIA triad is well-known standard model based on the security policies which are framed and made. It stands for the 3 pillars. Now, these 3 pillars, which are mainly the confidentiality, which is of data, integrity, that the data question hasn't been modified, and availability of systems and resources. These are the 3 pillars of the CIA triad. So when you go into your policies on your procedures, you'll find this term. However, it becomes a maritime risk management. We think only in terms of data security. Like normally in cyber security in all companies in the industry, it is data security mainly. But for marine, it is not. Given that the ships have operation technology, we can lead into real world physical impacts and physical problems of the ship if not properly managed. So we need to frame the policies and particularly secure them. So this is what it is. It is not only a data thing, because in ship, there are a lot of machineries and a lot of equipments which can be affected by the cyber criminals. We'll go into them in detail soon. But there are 2 different terminologies in cybersecurity where they are different and they are used very often by using the abbreviations like IT. So far, we knew IT is information technology, which is very much into the cybersecurity. There's another abbreviation called OT. So those who don't know, these are operation technology. So IT and OT are 2 different things in cybersecurity. They're 2 different departments, you can say, which uses the data for any number of physical operations and need to be addressed separately. They are not same. Okay, Lumina will take care and give some instances and practical examples of IT and OT. She will talk about that. The next come is, what is the threat? see, everybody's afraid. Nobody, we know as mariners, we do not know exactly what happens. We know there is cybersecurity, your account is hacked, and there is some sort of a data transfer problem. But what actually is happening, we don't know. What are the threats of cybersecurity? Now there are some. If you go to these code, you will find them. There are some major threats of cybersecurity, and they are labeled. So these are the first is cyber misuse. Now, cyber misuse includes low-level criminal activities, including vandalism, disruption of systems, defacement of websites. It can deface your website, unauthorized access to your systems. The actions may not be malicious, but nevertheless deemed a criminal act. Now, in UK, if for the UK people, there's the UK Computer Misuse Act, which is very active in the UK. So the cybersecurity on the ships and marine also come under the UK Computer Misuse Act. So if you don't know this is also something to know about. The second threat is activist group. Now, what are these activist groups? They are known as hacktivism. They are the biggest hackers, hacktivism, seeking publicity or creating a pressure on behalf of specific objective. For example, to prevent handling of specific cargoes on a ship, to disrupt the operation of the ship. The target may be ship itself. It can be the operator. It can be a third party as a supplier or a recipient of cargo, charterers, anything. The next threat is espionage, seeking unauthorized access to sensitive information. And it can be intellectual property, it can be commercial information, corporate strategies, personal data, a lot of things, and the disruption of the state of commercial purposes. This is another threat. Another threat which comes under organized crime. Now, these are largely driven by financial gains. The hackers, they have financial gains. This may include criminal damage. This may include theft of cargo. This may include smuggling of goods and people and seeking evade taxes and excise duty. So these are all the things, the organized crimes, they organize it. And it takes, later on, I will give you an example how this has happened. I'll give you an exact example of a port, of a well-known port where this crime has taken place later on. Okay. The next fear is, the threat is terrorism. Use the ship to install fear and cause physical and economic disruption. Now, terrorism, also terrorists can use cybersecurity now to add to their terrorism activities. The next threat is warfare. There's a conflict between two countries when they aim the disruption of transport systems, infrastructure, or denial, operation use of and disable specific ships, like tankers and aircraft carriers, naval vessels. So this can be used in the warfare. So these are the main threats which call. There's another new terminology which, if you do not know, you will learn from this lesson, is called threat actors. Have you heard of that? Threat actors, they are the biggest, they are the heroes of the cyber criminals, let me say. So what they are individuals. For example, script kiddies, insiders. They can be activist groups, which are known as hacktivists, which I said. They can be commercial competitors. Even commercial competitors can hack your system. They can be cyber criminals. They can be terrorists. And they can be nation states and state-sponsored actors. So what are the effects of these threat actors are trying to achieve? Now, these are the threat actors which told you that all people are all called threat actors. And what you want to achieve? They have a 6D formula. 6D is a 6 delta formula with D. That is, the 6 Ds are destroy, degrade, deny, delay, deter, and distract. And these are all mentioned in your code. These are all mentioned and explained. The people have researched. Now I'll give you some examples of destroy. Destroy is destruction of cargo or in a port or which is no longer available for use. They'll make defunct any particular equipment. Next is degrade. Example of degrade include impacting the speed of maneuverability of a ship. Now hackers can maneuver the ship if they take hacked and take control. The ability to navigate accurately, monitor the local environment accurately to the point where the ability of the ships to operate significantly is impaired. That is degrade. Deny. Examples of deny may include denial access to the ship systems, information, data, possibly for such reasons as extortion for financial gain, or to mount a physical attack on the ship, or to kidnap for ransom purposes, like piracy can get involved with the cybersecurity. So that's denial. Sometimes they hack it and you can't go into your own system in the ship because they hacked the password. Now, in ship, this can cause accidents, okay? The next one is delay. The examples of delay is they can delay the timely operation of the ship or the ship's subsystems, such as knock-on effect may impact on business operations, charterers, cause penalties to be incurred. The fifth D is deter. Deter is the example may include influencing the business from operating in certain areas of the world oceans, operating in specific markets, or accessing specific ports from a commercial perspective. The next one is detect. Now, example of detect may include detection of people, cargo, ship locations, track such a planned physical theft, or a cargo manipulation might take place. So the next one is distract, the last one. This example of distract is ability to alter the state of sensors. You know, all the detective and security sensors you have, they can alter the state of the sensors to provide a distraction, whilst a data information extraction can take place. They can tamper with the sensor and then get some data information extraction to take place. So these are all the things which are there. This is all in the guidelines also. I'm not talking from my head. It is all in the guidelines. Now, what is coming up next for the future? This is very important. What is coming in the next 2-3 years? The next 2-3 years, what we are coming is exactly following the ISPS route. Now nothing has come up. Is developing a cybersecurity assessment like we had ISPS cybersecurity plan. Then we have developing a cybersecurity plan. CSP, we had a SSP for security ISPs. Now we have to have a CSP. Then the review of the CSP, monitoring and auditing of CSP. Now you will have a cyber security officer, and also anyway, the same officer can do the dual roles, and you also have a cyber security officer for company and for the ships, and managing the cyber security. So it's going to follow the flame plan in the next 2-3 years. So another audit, an audit plan, an audit team is going to add to what you have at the moment. Presently, it is just a plan you have to do for this year. And these things will come up slowly, but it's in the pipeline. Okay. Now the factors which are affecting the ship equipment, the cyber criminals, where they can in your ship. These are the many important things. Why I'm telling you this is what you can tell you and your staff and your crew and officers to be careful about. The first thing which is the ship equipment is communications. There's a huge lot of communications, which is ship to shore, ship to ship communications that may use a number of different requirements to produce facilities in a company for crew, passengers. Some of the common systems are the VHF and the UHF, the S-band, the PABX, they are all familiar. The 3G, 4G, 5G systems, the SATCOM. Now, a passenger ship might also utilize 4G aggregations to provide a digital internet communication for passengers. These are all can be hacked. In a passenger ship, big passenger ships like P&O and Cunard Line, they have about 3,000 passengers on board. All are using internet. So these are very important, like, you know, what sort of where they can be hacked and how. It is essential, therefore, that any kind of communication systems are identified along the various subsystems and that they may be connected to within the all categories defined. Because in cargo ships, only crew you can do. So how a cyber criminal can come into a crew account and then get information from that and then, you know, plan a crime. The next are navigation systems. I'll just go through quickly. Navigation systems on bridge, most of them, anyone which are connected with the internet, they are, you know, vulnerable. So voice data recorder, VDR, The AIS, automatic identification system, they can be hacked. Electronic chart display, EXIS system can be hacked. Ships plant systems, safety systems like GMDSS. Anyway, those who are not familiar, GMDSS is Global Maritime Distress and Safety System. The AMVA system, which is Automated Mutual Assistant Vessel Rescue. The SSAS, which is the Ship Security Alarm System in ISPS. NAVTEX, radar, public address system, general address system. These all can get affected by the cyber crimes. The cargo management system is next. The loadicator, the loading plan, everything which are connected, they can be hacked. Passenger management systems in passenger ships, passenger access system in passenger ship, and access to systems. So these are all the areas in the ship which actually takes care of everything, you know, where we have to be careful that an outsider cannot come into the system. Lumina will give you an example of how a ship system is affected by, you know, by doing something which is not right, or, you know, by rebooting. She will give you an example for that. Okay, now handling release of information to third party. This is the main thing. Now the crimer and the criminals are all waiting to get information. So the less information you give about the ship in a public media, the better it is. Before hacking, they will get all the information which they have without hacking from the ship, all the details. There are a lot of areas where you can go and find out details. Let's consider the impact of releasing data. Now, including potential arising from the data aggregation, prevent the leakage of security-related information, protect commercially sensitive data and intellectual property, safeguard personally identifiable information, taking into account that the range of attributes that can use by identify individual. They can identify a particular individual. And it will be shown later to you how a ship's crew can be targeted, and they can go enter through his email ID. So these are the things. This is all not only for shipping. This is for every industry, wherever you're working. This applies to that. So you have to be careful, and you'll be shown by Lumina how the emails can be, you know, corrupt, how the criminals are tackling. You have to be very careful to see the email addresses and all that. Now we spoke about all these things which you're required to do as per IMO guidance, right? Now the references, where do you get the actual regulations? The regulations are in ISO, as we know, as ISO 9000, 14000. Now the cybersecurity comes under ISO 27001. So 27001 to 27033, you will find all the cyber security norms in ISO, all the requirements. You will also get them in IEC 1335. So that is also security management, and so you can get all these things detailed here. Now we come to the functional elements, which IMO has clearly given in their guidance, the elements of cyber risk management. Now, what is the goal of the maritime risk management? Why they are telling us to do this? It is to support safe and secure shipping, which is operationally resilient to cyber risk. Now, effective cyber risk management should start at the senior management level. Please listen to this carefully. The effective cyber risk management should start on the senior level in a company or an organization. Senior management should be embedded with a culture of cyber risk awareness at all levels on the organization. So there should be apt risk assessment and training to all the staffs in all the levels who have responsibility to ensure a holistic and flexible cyber risk management. So the senior management should know what exactly to do, because a lot of people they hack the senior management people, but they get a lot of information from them. So that is why it is the senior management level should have the full knowledge of cyber risk. Awareness is very, very important. That includes senior officers on ship, as well as your senior officers in the company. Now, We also provide training, like me. I also provide training for cybersecurity, emergency support, cyber attacks. And the next speaker, Lumina, is also in our team. She has her own company and she collaborates with us. And if you need anything in emergency or somebody's hacked, we are always there to help you. Okay. Now the framework requested by IMO. What is the framework requested by IMO? What we have to do this when you're making your cybersecurity plan? What is the thing? There are 5 things clearly mentioned by IMO which we have to take care. So these are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. These are the 5 things you need to stress upon. So I'll give you a small thing. Identify means define personal roles and responsibilities for cyber risk management. Identify the systems, assets, the data, capabilities that when disrupted can pose risks to ship operations. First thing is identify what all areas can pose a risk to the ship as well as the organization. Next is protect. Protect is implement risk control processes and the contingency planning. Now we have already a lot of contingency planning on board, but now there's another one adding into the contingency planning of cyber risk to protect against cyber event and to ensure continuity of shipping operations. Suppose some area of the cyber is hacked, the whole ship should not get affected. You should have continued operation, and you can have now the anti-hackers will work for it and they'll save the ship, but the normal operation should go on. Next is detect. Detect is develop and implement activities necessary to detect a cyber event in a timely manner. So that's the detect. Now respond. Respond is develop and implement activities and plans to provide resilience and restore systems necessary for shipping operations and services impaired due to cyber effect. So what you have to do, you have to respond to the cyber attack and to get back into the operations as fast as possible into normal operations. And the last one is recover. Recover means identify measures to up, restore cyber systems necessary for shipping operation impacted by a cyber event or a crime. So you have to have a backup system to restore so that anything which is corrupted and this thing by this thing, you can get back the original. Right. So now, apart from these are the things of IMO. There are a lot of other guidelines. If you go into the website and internet, you will find. I'll mention a couple of them to you. There are full guidelines of cybersecurity with BIMCO. Now, those who are not familiar, BIMCO is the Baltic and International Marine Council. It's very, very popular in Europe. Then the CLIA, that is the Cruise Lines International Association. These are for cruise ships. They have issued a lot of guidance on cybersecurity. ICS, that is the International Chamber of Shipping. Intercargo, Intertanko, and OCIMF, that is Oil Companies International Marine Forum, and IUMI, that is International Union of Marine Insurance. These are a few of the major things we have issued. So if you want to have more idea about cybersecurity, go to their website and then you can get to know and get a very good idea of what the cybersecurity in all these companies and organizations are all about. Now I shall show you some examples of real life and how ships and ports are affected by the cyber crimes. So I'll give you some small example. Times are limited, so I can't, but I'll just, can I have the slide, please? Because the cyber crimes in UK. Now see, these are cyber crimes in UK. Because I'm based in UK, the computer misuse is 17%, cyber-enabled fraud is 36%, and all other crime is 47%. This is how the different types of cyber crimes come. So the next slide, please. Now, these are examples of risk and consequences. Now, the risk and consequences, what are the risks? Duplicating bills of lading. Now, bills of lading, they are all electronic. They all can be duplicated. This is an ever-increasing push towards the electronic bills of lading, as we know, and generates further potential to create duplicate bills in the international trade. Then changing cargo manifestos. See, a lot of things we're not, your cargo manifestos, when you're loading in your container ship, also they can change the cargo manifestos remotely. I will give you an example soon to how the cyber criminals, changed the things and the containers in disguise, and they've taken out contraband stuffs. So consequences is damage, reputation, delay, and of course, that is money. Okay, the next one is I'm going to show you an example what happened in the port of Antwerp. This is a real thing which has happened upon in Antwerp. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes. In Antwerp, in Belgium, one of the ports were hacked. And we know that only 5% of the containers in the trade are really physically inspected, and even less in the European country. So a gang of hijackers went into the port's computer in Antwerp, and this hijacking was going on for 2 years. So whenever a person is hacking, he's not hacking for one day. He's observing you and the company for 1 or 2 years before he commits the crime. So these accused of them, so they had what they, in the Antwerp, they changed the cargo manifestos and they removed these containers which has contraband items like, ammunitions and drugs. And they've taken them off from the list, so the port authorities couldn't see the computer in the loading and the discharging list. And then they have provisions to take them out when they are discharging. So we have to be very careful. This was an incident like where, all these containers filled with, it can be explosives, it can be anything, and without anybody's knowledge, because the port authorities can't see those computers. So these are some of the incidents. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, preventions. Now, I have given two examples. One is a shipping company and one is a classification society. Now, like a shipping company, Thorn Group has invested a lot of money and a layered approach for network security. It is reviewing the cybersecurity protocols and educating crew to prevent cyber attack. Crew must be educated because the cyber criminals attack the crew because they know they have very little knowledge. So they have to be educated and trained to reduce. They have noticed a large proportion of cyber threats are passed on via email and therefore focused on the deficiencies on this. How they can hack from an email will be shown by Lumina. The next one is ABS. What is class societies doing? I'm ex-ABS, so I'm just putting the ABS thing. All the classes have done similar sort of a thing. They have formed a dedicated cybersecurity team to try and help and manage the cyber crime threat. They have launched the ABS cyber safety service to the industry and the guidelines to ship owners and and the cyber crimes that ABS publications to bring. This is just to the help to the industry. So now the details of the crimes and hackers and always to safeguard will be presented by our next speaker, which is Lumina Mukherjee. And I thank you for your patience to hear. And I look forward for the question answer sessions when I can answer your questions. But before I finish, I would like to inform you that where the organizers of this webinar, the Amon board, is a free app which can be downloaded to authorize inspectors locally. Because in this pandemic, now inspectors, superintendents, they cannot fly from long distance with a quarantine system in every country. So this app gives you, when you download this app in a phone, anybody can download it, then you click the booking button and then you get all the countries. So you click the country and then you get in that particular country which are the experienced auditors and superintendents available to attend your ship. So this is just what we are doing is to help the ship owners and the managers to do it. Like for example, if you go to United Kingdom and click, you'll find Seed Maritime and you'll find me and my team at your service in the UK and Europe to do it. So the whole idea is everything can be done from the phone itself, right from the payment and right from the surveys, getting the surveys qualification, everything. And this is what is going to be in the next pandemic. So thank you very much for this. And it's over to you, Kiran, for the next speaker. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Devashish, for in-depth discussion about cyber risk management and related threats. I'm sure our audience must have gained insights of cyber risks and will protect their vessels and organizations with enhanced security measures. Without losing precious time, I'm going to introduce our second speaker, Ms. Lumena Mukherjee. Ms. Lumena started her career as a cybersecurity consultant in 2016 with PwC. At PwC, she worked across multiple security verticals like governance, risk and compliance, web application security, and penetration testing. She also writes for cybersecurity blogging platforms such as HackerNoon, SAPblog, InfoSec Insights, and Dev Community. Lumina runs her own startup company providing cybersecurity solutions for small-scale businesses. They also conduct security awareness trainings for corporates in addition to providing IT security services. She has done BTech in computer engineering from VTU and MTech in cybersecurity from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam University in India. I request Ms. Lumena to deliver her presentation. Over to you, Lumena.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kiran, for the wonderful introduction, and Debashish for your insights on the regulatory requirements for maritime cyber risk management. Before we begin, I'd like to share my screen because I've prepared a few slides. I'm hoping they will help you follow through as I speak. So just give me a minute as I do that. Okay, so we are going to start with a story which happened 7 years ago in 2013. And it was a team of researchers from Trend Micro who had reported vulnerabilities in the AIS system to IMO. What they had essentially done was they could make ships and other structures appear and disappear. And back then, AIS used zero encryption, and the system was completely unauthenticated. And as far as I know, not much has changed since then. So today we are going to talk about some of the security systems in maritime that have been compromised in the wild. When I say in the wild, I mean breaches that have actually happened and some other breaches which have been demonstrated to be exploitable by security researchers. One such example would be a GPS spoofing attack. Where essentially you manipulate GPS signals, and Edifact messaging system. It's the system which is tied to ship loading, and that can also be manipulated. So we'll take a brief look at these within the next few minutes. Debashish earlier had spoken about IT and OT, and I would like to reiterate the point that you cannot treat the two as same because the policies framed for each would be different. And I'm going to focus slightly more on OT because we don't talk enough about OT systems. The list below here is present on the ships, and these are all units that can be exploited. And it is important to understand that a lot of these systems, they not only run on outdated software, but they also run on components which themselves are obsolete. So if you have a piece of hardware which is not up to date, no matter how many software updates you install on it, or no matter how many times developers issue security patches, if your firmware underneath all of it is not secure, there's only so much you can do. And in line with that, it is when you update an IT system, it is a known fact that sometimes updates can break systems. They can break components, and that is why usually it is done in the IT industry. We have incremental updates. When it comes to any changes in an OT infrastructure, the changes can wreak havoc on the entire network. To give you an example, there was this particular case where an engineer, he had gone on board a ship to carry out a regular software update, and he was trying to update the HVAC system on the vessel, which is essentially your heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. And sometime during the entire routine procedure, what happened was that there was an accidental reboot. And essentially that caused the dampers to shut down. So dampers, they sort of control the airflow. And when the damper in the engine room had closed off, it cut off the entire air supply in that area. This is one instance of how a simple update could have gone horribly wrong, but thankfully the ship was docked and the engine room was unmanned, so no real harm was done. Another thing I would like to point out before moving on to the next slide is that the ship network and the crew network, I will talk later about network segregation and segmentation. Usually what happens in most vessels is that either the segregation is not at all there, the two networks are, sort of interconnected, or it is not done properly. And it is extremely important to have a separate, completely isolated ship network and to have a separate, at least, virtually isolated crew network, because oftentimes what happens is when you have everything connected just over a shipboard LAN, any sort of an email attack or any sort of a compromised malware that gets installed on any one of the systems, mobile phones, laptops, desktops, whatever, on the crew network, that sort of can propagate into the ship network, which has all your critical infrastructure, and we don't want that to happen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular slide answering what's been hacked, because essentially you can Google the cybersecurity incidents which have happened in maritime. But I do want to point out one thing. It is a particular statistics which is extremely disturbing, and it was reported by Naval Dome, which is an Israeli-based cybersecurity firm. And they said that just in the last 3 years, the maritime attacks reported have increased 900%, and from February 2020 this year, the attacks have gone up to 400%. So just something to think about. All right, coming to attack vectors. So how is it that these criminals, cyber criminals, how do they enter your system? So the most prevalent way that they do this is through ransomware attacks and through malware. So malware is any sort of ransomware, again, is a type of malware. So any sort of virus, any sort of malicious program or script that is delivered to your system via, usually typically it's via emails, because a lot of times these days your USB ports on vessels are blocked. So it's either through emails, it could be through USB ports if they are not blocked, or a lot of the equipment that you use, equipment in the sense the OT equipments that gets manufactured by certain third-party vendors, they leave backdoors open on the underlying hardware to run remote updates. And this backdoor could be potentially exploited. So these are usually the ways that attackers get entry. There are, of course, other ways. And when we talk about malware, when we are talking about how it's propagated, two things to definitely keep in mind is whenever you receive an email, it is never a good idea to click on a link, and it is never a good idea to download any sort of an attachment unless you have sufficient reason to do so and you completely trust where the email is coming from. And I don't just mean that you look at the email ID, you recognize the email ID and you hit on the download button, because remember that even a particular email ID, which might seem like it's coming from one of your crew members or your senior officials, that email ID itself can be spoofed. So it is important to read a little about how to inspect message headers. Depending on your email client, whether you're using Outlook or Gmail, they will have a specific way that you can actually go back and verify the email headers, and that will tell you exactly how the actual source from which that email has originated. Other ways in which you can download malware onto your system is by visiting compromised websites, or just by these sort of pop-ups that come up that, you know, your PC is infected, you need to run a scan or download the software. Malicious apps from your mobile store, even Apple Store and Android, a lot of time, though they do have verifications and validation checks in place, sometimes it skips that and you have an infected app right in your app store. So that's one way to do it. This is just an example phishing mail. This is supposedly a Windows error report. And notice how it's come from outlook.com. We know that typically you would see an address like a microsoft.com here. And even when it is from microsoft.com, remember that the M itself can be, you know, sometimes attackers do this, that instead of an M, they would just write an R and an N. And that looks awfully lot like a M. And we don't stop to notice that. Another thing you can keep in mind is whenever you have a link, and if you must click on it, at least hover over the link so that right at the bottom hand side of the screen, you will usually see the URL to which you're getting redirected. So hover, don't click. Okay, so for the next few slides, I'll take you through a quick walkthrough of the kind of information which is available publicly without engaging in any form of an active attack. So without running any scans against your network, without running any sort of checks to see, you know, whether we can actually penetrate any of your layered security approach. Without doing any of that, what is the kind of information which is available out there publicly? This is a process which is done by any security professional, by any hacker who's trying to access your system. It is called passive reconnaissance. If you use open source tools to do it, it is referred to as open source intelligence or OSINT. And I used the search engine, which is called Shodan. You can access it for free. There's a limit on the number of entries you can see, but otherwise it's accessible freely. And it is like a search engine like Google, but for IoT systems or essentially your industrial control systems or SCADA networks. All those devices show up. So if there are webcams and you know, live cams, there's some interesting stuff you can see on that particular search engine. So I got access to a lot of VSAT terminals, and some of the interesting things I noticed were was that the name of the ship was disclosed right at the beginning. The location was disclosed, where the vessel is heading, that's disclosed. And you get this very interesting login portal. This is, of course, the user login portal. Right here, you can see you also have the administration login portal. And a quick Google search will give you the default credentials. So in this case, it was admin 1234. I did not try it because then that would be an active attack. And I was just doing a passive recon. Other informations, again, this is also from Shodan. You see the sort of ports which are open. Most of these ports would again have no form of authentication protection. And depending on the technology stack used, you will have a list of vulnerabilities which are ready to be exploited. So you also get that information, and you get a list of insecure services, actually all sorts of services which are running. And from there, you can pick up what are the insecure services running on which open port. This was a COMBOX terminal. Once again, the vessel name is disclosed. The moment you hover on this VSAT tab, you get to see something like a network configuration details here. It is never a good idea to disclose any of this information publicly because it leaves you open to be exploited, and this sort of a portal itself to be internet facing is dangerous because all you need to do is look over the manual or Google and try to find out default credentials. And a lot of times, a lot of these vessels do not have their default credentials changed. I got this information off Vessel Finder and marine traffic. It tells the port calls, the IMO, the call sign, the MMSI details. All of this information is readily available. where it's going, where it's headed, the location, and estimated time of arrival, and the nearby vessels. So now that we have all this information, what are we going to do with it? Because how does it help us, right? So essentially, before launching an active attack, every attacker will build a target profile. And it doesn't help that we have sites like myship.com, which is like Facebook meets LinkedIn, but for mariners. And they have a list of all the vessels which are there, and probably not all, but at least some of them were definitely there. And they come with a list of who are the crew members on it. And this makes it very easy to, just, okay, so Queen Mary 2, for example, has 22 crew list right here. And I could craft a phishing email to any of them, and it depends on my luck whether or not they fall for it. And this is exactly why training your staff is very, very critical, because if they know how to identify a phishing attack, chances are that they won't click on it. Out here, I also want to bring your attention to a threat which is, as far as I know, it's not been seen in the maritime industry much yet, but it is extremely prevalent in IT industry, and it's called advanced persistent threat. It is in line with the Antwerp breach, which Devashish mentioned, where they had stayed on in the network for 2 years. So it's something along those lines, that an attacker lives on in your network without alerting you to their presence. So your IDS, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, there's a potential of them getting fooled and them getting tricked, and none of your alerts work, and they stay on in your network and they exfiltrate data. They essentially steal your.
अरे कुछ नहीं वो सब बंद हो गया था मीटिंग.
Lumina, please go ahead. Please go ahead. We are listening to you.
Okay. Everyone can see the slide, right?
Yes, slides are visible. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, so essentially advanced persistent threat is a kind of threat where the attacker lives on in your network and they steal data. It could be intellectual property information. They exfiltrate any sort of data that is relevant to them. And they could also carry out any sort of damage to your network infrastructure. So we don't want that to happen either. Okay, so GPS spoofing. Why does it work to begin with? So the GPS receiver has no idea whether it's picking up a signal from a legitimate satellite data, or if it's an attacker who is sending out spoof signal and they are picking that up. So essentially the way it works is GPS instruments are very cheap. They are very affordable to get, and it is not at all hard to send a frequency which has to be stronger than the original frequency, and it shows up on the GPS receiver. And the moment you get the two of them aligned, the original signal with a weaker frequency gets knocked off, and the device picks up the fake GPS signal. And the moment that happens, if your systems are on autopilot, your ship steers off the course, and a lot of times your triggers and your alerts are not even generated. So it happens without anybody knowing. AIS, again, is something which is based, it relies on location sensing technology to grab the data. So it's, in this case, it's relying on GPS to grab that data. And there is no validation mechanism on AIS that tells us whether that data is actually, whether it doesn't tell us whether that data is actually valid or it's not. So there is no way to validate that, and the coordinates could be incorrect, and they would still get picked up and broadcasted to nearby vessels and to onshore receivers. Additionally, you can also enter data manually into AIS, and of course the data can be falsified. And also, because none of this is encrypted, or none of this is authenticated, there is no authentication mechanism in place, all of this data is susceptible to a man-in-the-middle attack, and the potential for data manipulation is huge. All right, so this is the Edifact messaging system. This is a sample Edifact messaging system. Typically, this is what it looks like. It's used to create ship loading and container storage plans. And these are like electronic messages that are transmitted between the port authorities, the terminals, the shipping lines, and the ships. There are certain interesting, remember all of this also flows in plain text. There is no form of encryption here either. So this information, if you manipulate like the address where it's going and the quantity or the price details, it can lead to a lot of chaos. And one of the other things which have to be noted here is this particular value. This is called this is the container weight, and it depends on this. The stability of the ship is dependent, and you typically you see a line in the message that looks something like this, and this stands for verified gross mass, and kgm indicates that the weight, the trailing weight you see here is in kilos. Sometimes it can say lbr, which means it's pound, and the moment an attacker manipulates this, the ship loading software will have no clue that it's not the correct data, and so they are going to arrange everything based on this particular value, and if this is manipulated, it could destabilize the entire ship. Some key takeaways, most of which have already been discussed. Few I would like to point out specifically is along with default credentials, we often have firmware manufacturers who send firmware where the credentials are not, it's not possible to change those credentials. So they are hard coded into the firmware. There was a report, I think in 2014 by IOActive with a list of vendors who only ship hard-coded credentials, products with hard-coded credentials, and they also have backdoors, they have weak password reset mechanisms, and all sorts of problems. So whenever you can, do not use equipment that comes with hard-coded credentials, because all these credentials are not just known to you, they are also publicly known because it's hard-coded and it's common and it's public knowledge, or at least it's very easy to find out. The other point I would like to mention is, because remember, everything is connected over the shipboard LAN. So you have sensors, you have your AIS, you have everyone talking to each other and sending the data to EGDIS, and all of this is interconnected. And when all of this communication happens unencrypted in plain text, any attacker on the network or listening to the network can easily read that information, which if you encrypt it, they won't be able to read it, even if they can see what is passing through. They will not know exactly what is passing through, and they will not be in a position to manipulate that data. So it is important to use SSL TLS certificates to encrypt your communication channels. Of course, it's a given that in order to secure your network, in order to have proper network security, you have to have network visibility. You have to know what are the devices which are there on your network.
I think we are facing some technical difficulties in connecting with Lumina. Yeah, she's back. Lumina, please go ahead.
Are you guys not able to see me?
Yes, we can see you. You please continue. Lumina, okay. Can you hear me? Lumina,
yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, please continue. We are listening. We can see your slides. Please continue.
Okay. Okay, they're saying that my internet connection is unstable. Can you guys see my slide, Kiran?
Yes, we can see your slides. You please continue.
All right. So
go ahead, Lumina. Go ahead.
Okay. So as I was saying that a lot of times it is important. It is not just important to know what is on your network. It is also important to understand what is the underlying security protocol on which the equipments are running. So if you don't know the protocols that these devices are running on, and if you don't know whether or not there are any insecure connections, you will not be able to fix that. Staff training, as I said, is important, not just because they can be the easiest entry point or the easiest gateway into your network, but also because they can be your biggest source of defense. So if your security, if your staff is trained on security and how to respond to incidents, they will be a line of defense instead of being your weakest security link. And it is not just enough to preach security. It is important that you train them repeatedly, not just once, on the latest security breaches, how they happen, and have them go through simulated attack scenarios where they can respond to threats in real time. Assessing what is publicly known is critical, because a lot of information, sensitive data, which is publicly disclosed, can be the entry point into your network infrastructure. You would want to have a counterintelligence team who comes up and obfuscates those data or redacts information that is critical and that is available out there. To conclude, I would just like to say once again that framing IT policies and OT policies in the same breath does not work, because IT and OT are two very different systems. And just to give you an example, for those of you familiar with ISO 27001, we have this thing in IT called access control policy, under which we have account lockouts. So account lockouts work by like if you have a password, and if you send it a wrong password a certain number of times, you get locked out of your account to protect it against any kind of breach, or against any kind of brute force attacks. Now, if you do the same thing with OT, that would cause a denial of service, because imagine a critical infrastructure where an attacker sends wrong credentials a couple of times, and you get locked out and you're no longer able to access it. A critical infrastructure will essentially be denied to you. So IT and OT work in very different ways, and it is important not to treat them the same way. It is important to have separate policies for both of them. So thank you. Thank you for your patience. And I hope some of this was useful, and it gave you a better understanding of some of the risks involved. Over to you, Kiran.
Thank you, Lumina, for emphasizing on cybersecurity and its implications and possible solutions. Now we will play a promo video for our organization. Lumina, please unshare your screen.
I have stopped sharing. Can you still see my screen?
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Srinivas, can you put the...
Moving further, I wish to mention that today our webinar is graced by special guests who have legendary contributions to the maritime industry. Our first special guest is Mr. Sean Moloney. Mr. Moloney has more than 38 years of experience at the top of international maritime public relations and publishing fields. He has long and varied career, including 9 years as a political editor of Lloyd's List. He became publishing director of Informa's Maritime Magazine division, which he followed by setting up his own maritime publishing business, Elaborate Communications, 18 years ago. He is publisher of shipping industry's leading magazine, Ship Management International, and is a regular visitor and contributor at global maritime conferences. Mr. Moloney is also the founder and owner of London International Shipping Week. In addition, he contributes to Council of Maritime UK. He is a shipwright and a freeman of the City of London. I request Mr. Moloney to say a few words. Over to you, Mr. Moloney.
Kieran, thank you very much. And Debasha, thank you very much indeed for inviting me today. A very, very enlightening presentation, certainly by Lumina there, really. It's actually quite worrying to see to the extent that the shipping industry can be vulnerable to cyber attack. And I think you raised some valid points there. Certainly one, as far as a lot of companies, do forget to update their hardware and their software with company updates, and this can actually lead to problems actually occurring. Elaborate Communications, apart from being a publishing company, we're also a public relations business dealing with ship owners and ship managers and the industry worldwide. One company that we looked after was a company called Pentest, and they're an ethical hacker. So they would work with companies to identify loopholes in their systems. The gentleman involved was giving a speech at CMA, Connecticut Maritime Association, a year or so ago, over in Stamford, Connecticut. And he brought on stage a kettle that he had plugged in, and it was a Wi-Fi enabled kettle. I think that you could actually sort of turn it on from your phone. And in front of everybody's eyes, he hacked into the kettle, and you can see it all on the screen. And then he hacked into the Wi-Fi system, and then hacked into everybody's phone, which was really quite interesting to think that you can. And he said you can even do it through vending machines. So the potential there is quite significant, really. Just to give you a little bit of information, just about Deb asked me just to talk a little bit about myself, and also I've known Deb for many, many years, and certainly through the work that we do with London International Shipping Week. The COVID-19 has dealt an interesting curved ball to the events side for the global shipping industry. As you know, this year there's been a lot of events that have been postponed or cancelled, and certainly put forward to next year. We're a little bit fortunate with London International Shipping Week because it's not due to happen until a year in September. So it's all action stations, and we're ploughing ahead for that, and still sort of looking to have 25,000 to 30,000 people come into London for a lot of events a year in September, which should be good. And certainly look forward to seeing Deb and the hard work that he's been doing there in the shipping circles around London, which should be good. I thought the webinar was particularly interesting. I mean, it's interesting with COVID-19, we're all in danger in the shipping industry of having our eye taken off the ball on a whole range of other issues because of COVID-19. At the moment, crew change issues are really the issue of the day as well. How shipping is trying to get out of this and cope with this pandemic and the effect it's having on their ability to make profit and also to drive their businesses forward. So we have to make sure that we do still keep a firm eye on issues like COVID-19, like cybersecurity, as well as the environment and as well as emissions as well. I think that's very, very important. So really, I'm delighted to have been asked to attend. I attended the last one that Deb had as well. Certainly something of a lot of interest for us. And it's interesting, I think it comes into more sharp focus as we're now even more IT facing now because of the fact that we're all working from home and working from strange offices in our bedrooms and our sitting rooms and what have you, that we're using software like Zoom. One last thing that's worth pointing out is that there are a lot of video conferencing systems available, WebEx and Zoom and Teams and all of these ones here. I particularly like Zoom, although Zoom does seem to have security issues of its own, questions over that. And it was interesting, actually. I'm very pleased to see that Rob Cotter there on the left-hand side or just below me on the screen, because for the first hour of this meeting, he had my name rather than his own there. So I thought maybe I'd been hacked at some stage. I didn't quite know what was going on. But I thought, well, if we can't have two Sean Maloneys in the shipping industry, for goodness sake, that would be good for anybody. But certainly Zoom, I think, is good. And I think there are silver linings in all of these clouds. But Debasis and Lumina, thank you very much indeed for your hard work and your presentations. Very well done today. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Welcome, Sean.
We thank Mr. Moloney for joining us today in this webinar. Our second guest is Commodore Ashok Bhal. Commodore Ashok Bhal is presently the Director of Indian Maritime University, Kolkata campus. Prior to this responsibility, he served in Indian Navy for over 3 decades. He was Additional Director General of Weapons and Electronic Systems Establishment in Indian Navy. In addition, he worked as a Director of Hindustan Shipyard Limited for 5 years. Commodore Ashok has been awarded the prestigious Vishishta Seva Medal by President of India. He completed bachelor's degree from IIT Roorkee and master's degree from IIT Kharagpur. He was gold medalist at IIT Kharagpur. He has also done MBA from IGNOU. We are very glad to know the helm of DMET is in the safe hands of Commodore Ashok Bhal, and the students are benefited from his vast experience. I request Commodore Ashok to say a few words. Over to you, Commodore Ashok.
Thanks, Kiran. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, loud and clear.
Okay. Thanks, firstly, to you and Mr. Debashis and Lumina for giving us a very good insight about the cyber security. And they have raised very valid points into this domain, which is, I would say, to the merchant navy, this domain is something which is very new, but 35 years I served in Indian Navy in warship, and it is much more elaborate there. And I have personally done a lot of research, lot of work on this in an establishment, research establishment named VESI, Weapon Electronic System Engineering Establishment, as to how to tackle this cyber security, especially on the warships where we have got a lot of fire control systems, missile system, gunnery system, data bus systems, and how things should not be hacked, both by the electronic warfare as well as by the cyber security attacks. And gentlemen and lady, I must tell you, this subject looks very simple, but it is not. Because more security levels and firewalls you will create, the hackers would always be one step ahead of you. And to go up to the 20th stage or 30th stage of coding and creating what we generally do becomes very expensive. Probably Lumina would be able to, she kept her presentation very simple, I know, for obvious reasons, but this is a much more complex subject to go about. It looks very easy to understand. Yes, this is required. This should be integrated in your ship safety systems. But what to do, how to achieve it is very difficult task. And most of the time people don't understand, and especially people at the top level. The only way for them to understand it more easily if they are shown the practical demonstration. This is what would happen to your system. This is how you will. We had some sort of attack where in the mid-seas helicopters were brought and suddenly they lost everything and they didn't know where the ship was. Luckily, by the time it landed back, it had fuel left for only 2-3 minutes. So these things can be really very dangerous, especially on ships which are more advanced the ship, more vulnerable it is for you to attack. More simpler the ship, it's not very difficult to attack it. Right. Now, how to prevent and how to safeguard, as Debashis brought out, ships have got very less time. Probably if they have to follow the laid down guidelines of 1st January 2021, say they have hardly few months left only. So only way for them is just to hire a very, very good agency. Give him the ship system, network, and then ask him to design a network which can be integrated with your ship systems network to prevent this cyber security attack. Because you would not know, you know your system, you would not know what the hacker would be using for it. That only an expert should be able to tell you. So I can go much more into detail, but I would be eating most of the time. So on this subject, sometimes when Mr. Devashish would be visiting DMET, probably I would sit down with him for an hour or so and share my experience on this field. But thanks a lot at this time. Very, very educative things, and definitely I would like to ask one or two questions when we come on the question and answer session. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to join. I am highly indebted to Mr. Devashish for having invited me here. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our third guest for today is Mr. Sunil Kapoor. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Kapoor. He is the director of FML Ship Management in Cyprus. He is an excellent influencer and dedicated mentor who supports his team through sharing his enthusiasm for the work and having an open door policy. Mr. Kapoor is not only a leader himself, but also he has inspired and mentored countless others who have gone on to becoming leaders in the shipping industry. In 1993, Mr. Kapoor came ashore. He worked with Lloyd's Register as a surveyor based in India. He joined Fleet Management Limited, Hong Kong, way back in 1996 as a technical superintendent and gradually rose to his present rank of director of FML Cyprus. Mr. Kapoor is a member of Board of Governors of Cyprus Maritime Academy. He is also a board member of Cyprus Marine Club in Limassol. He sits on the technical committees of all major classification societies. He has an engineering background with degree in marine engineering from DMET Calcutta. I request Mr. Kapoor to say a few words. Over to you, Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Kiran, for a brief info about me. I see that our director is there. I always feel very humbled, and I feel that it was one of a lucky thing that I studied in DMET, and I gave all credit to that institute. What I am today, I am because of my association with DMET and our initial good education system which we followed in DMET. So very interesting. Thanks, Devashish, for inviting me. I know you are taking a lot of interest and you are putting things together, and it was so interesting to be part of this seminar today. Great discussions from Lumina. Your presentations were very good. There were so many things. So we realized that cyber security is an important issue, and it has been always there. It started coming in various aspects, and we could see that a lot of these modern Hollywood movies were indicating that this is going to happen. And now we see that it is actually happening in real life. It came to maritime industry very slowly when they realized that they can make some mega bucks out of it. It started offshore and also onshore. And as you rightly said, whatever we try to do, the hackers will be ahead of us. So I also agree what the director said. We have to keep things very simple. Why make things complicated so that it can be easily hacked? We have been doing a lot of training in our own offices and on the ships, trying to encourage people to look into this aspect. We, in fact, as a company, went for ISO 27000 way back in 2018, realizing that there could be possibly a problem. So we have our own cyber, but this does not mean that in spite of putting all these things, that we could not be the victim, as people are moving faster than the companies which are incorporating. I know Devashish, let me also speak. Devashish told me to speak something about him. I know Devashish from DAVT time. He was my junior. And then he joined ABS, and then we met in Calcutta. And then I still remember when he got a job in London, he was asking whether he should take it or not. And he moved to London and he did a very good job joining this UK ship register. He made a lot of insight. He brought in a lot of new technology and system, and then later on moved to KICS. So we have been also using Devashish for his deep experience in port state control and other things. So whenever ships are calling in Europe, especially UK, so Devashish, he attends the ships or he sends there. So I feel there's a lot of good work being done here. Once again, I don't want to take too much of time. Thank you very much. Kiran, you did a good job. Your moderation has been very good. So I wish you all the best, and please pick up more relevant subjects and debates so that this can bring more awareness into the system. So thanks once again.
It's over, sir, from your side.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. I also like to thank our FML staff, Mr. Deva, Mr. Rohit, and Ms. Rafaela for joining us today in this webinar. Thank you, everyone. Moving forward, our fourth guest is Mr. Robert Cottrell. Mr. Robert has extensive sea and shore experience. He served in British Merchant Navy for total 14 years, including 3 years as a chief engineer. Thereafter, he worked as a technical superintendent with prominent shipping companies and as a risk assessor for London Marine Insurance Interest. Mr. Robert worked for Maritime and Coast Guard Agency as a surveyor at Milford Haven and Cardiff Marine offices. He was area operations manager for West of England and Wales. I request Mr. Robert to say a few words. Over to you, Mr. Robert.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you loud and clear. You're visible.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I thought both presentations were quite excellent and very informative. Lumina, you are young, and I think you'll do well in life. It gave us all a food for thought, and it must be a bit of a headache for shipping companies that are operating right now to keep ahead of the game. I'm retired now, and sometimes I think, thank God I am retired. And I don't know how we're all going to sleep tonight after that presentation, but that's basically all I have to say. I know Sean's name come up with mine during the presentations and instead of mine, and I thought we were under some sort of cyber attack at points through the presentations. But I thought it all went very well, and what a format to do this in, and for everyone to see each other, because I guess we're all friends at the end of the day, and perhaps we can all work together and share ideas. Should you have any incidences of cyber attacks. So thank you again. Thank you for the invite, Debasis. We'll speak soon. Thank you, Lumina. And back to you, Kieran, and thank you for your moderation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Our fifth and last speaker for today is Mr. Alok Roy. Mr. Alok worked at sea for 9 years as a chief engineer in shore career with OMI Shipping in 1994. There he worked for 5 years. Later, he joined Bernard Schulte Ship Management, which is known as BSM, where he performed diverse roles as a superintendent and general manager. Mr. Alok is working as a fleet director in BSM Hong Kong since 2014. He has extensive experience in handling various types of ships. He operates ships from general cargo vessels to super container vessels and to VLCCs. Mr. Alok has done Bachelor of Marine Engineering from DMET in 1983. I request Mr. Alok to say a few words. Over to you, Mr. Alok.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. You're loud and clear and visible.
Yeah, thank you, Kiran. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Lumina and Debashish, for the insights which cybersecurity is being a part of the information field. We are not very, it's not a familiar ground, and it was very illuminating to hear all the points. Devashish has been a very old friend. We've known each other for 40 years. No better person than Devashish to talk about anything related to shipping. He's been with MCA for a long time. We still touch base whenever I require any advice about any regulatory matters, and he's always willing to express his opinion, and which is very helpful to us. Coming to the topic of the day, shipping industry has been exposed to threats from time immemorial. Like there was piracy, even recently there was piracy in a lot of areas in the world. But cybersecurity is one area which has potential to cause very great damage, like economically, and I mean it very difficult to actually control the extent of damage it can cause. And like it was mentioned in the presentation, there's so many fields it can attack. There's so many inlet points where it can actually attack you. We have also taken some mitigating steps about cybersecurity. We have some systems in place. Class societies have taken cognizance of this and have come out with these cybersecurity notations, which would be helpful. And I'm sure we've taken the right steps at the right time before it gets too late. And let's hope that we can control it, and rather we can be one step ahead than the hackers themselves. So, I mean, I'm in distinguished companies of people who know much more about cybersecurity than me, so I don't want to talk much about it. But I'm sure this presentation was very helpful and very illuminating. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Now we will commence our question and answer sessions. So I have noticed few of the questions coming from the floor. So there is first question for Mr. Devashish. The question mentions that if a company has not a cybersecurity plan ready by 1st of January 2021, can the vessel be still detained by the port state control?
Okay, Kiran, thank you. Whoever's asked this question it's very, very relevant. Although the deadline is on the 1st of January 2021. Now, the vessel will not be detained. That's the answer. Because here is we just have to have it's just presently it's not implementation. Presently, it's just the plan has to be in place. That's what the auditor will find. If it doesn't have in place, maximum the vessel will suffer. The vessel will get a non-conformity in the International Safety Management ISM audit. So the vessel at this point of time will not be detained if you do not have a cybersecurity plan in place. Is that satisfying?
Yes, sir. This answer makes sense, sir. We have second question. Which all parties other than the ship are affected in cyber attack?
Well, yes. Apart from the ship, first is the company. Then the people also all involved with the companies are attacked, are affected, like classification society, the flag state, the port authorities, the agents, the charterers. They are all involved in because they're all communicating on via emails and everything. So once someone gets hacked, the hackers can go on to them. So apart from the ship and the company, all the flag states and class societies and any companies or suppliers, ship channelers, whoever is communicating with the ship can be affected.
Thank you, sir. Second question, sorry, next question is for Ms. Lumena. Vessels emails and other communications are usually handled by vessel's master. How and when the master of the vessel will come to know that the vessel has suffered cyber attack? What are the preliminary indications of cyber attack?
So the preliminary indications, depending on the kind of technology stack that you have in place, whether you have intrusion detection systems and IPS, or whether you have logging and monitoring done, there are indications in network by observing the network traffic that you can gain. But again, it depends on the kind of attack which is happening. So a few attackers can craft the network packets in such a way that your firewall might not be able to read that particular signature and not generate an attack, not generate an alert. So it really depends on the form of the attack. But typically in any infrastructure, you have firewalls, IDS, IPS, and these systems help you to monitor traffic and flag any kind of deviant behavior.
Lumena, next question is, which parameters of AI's data can be tampered by hackers and what are the consequences? So which parameters of AI's data?
So I think every parameter can be tampered with, because everything goes in plain text, right? It is not an system which is encrypted, and in fact the protocol on which it is based, the NEMIA protocol itself, is very insecure. So I think previously you had 0183 and now it's a revised standard, but the underlying protocol is not very secure, because a lot of these protocols which are used in the maritime industry, they were not designed with security in mind. So there is an inherent risk always, and plus because there is no authentication mechanism, no validation checks, no encryption, it is very easy to manipulate every data that flows through AIS.
Lumina, there is one question from our audience, Mr. Subrata Das, that how is it easy to encrypt the data? Is it easy or is it difficult?
So is it easy to encrypt the data? It is easy to encrypt the data, because all you have to do is install SSL certificates and make sure that you're storing the private key in a secure location and not share that with anybody. And there are several vendors like Komodo, now known as Sectigo, and Symantec and GeoTrust. A lot of these vendors provide SSL certificates, and that will help you with the encryption part of it. When it comes to decryption, depending on so if you use the standard protocols and if everything is maintained in a secure way, when it comes to key exchange and private keys, then you will not be able to decrypt the data until unless you have the private key. But if you use insecure protocols and insecure mechanisms to secure the data, to encrypt the data itself, then yes, of course, like for example, symmetric encryption is very easy to decrypt the data because the key is available to everyone.
Thank you, Lumina. Lumina, while delivering your presentation, you use one term called man in the middle attack. So what is it exactly?
Okay, so a man in the middle attack is essentially when you have two communicating parties and there is, the in between the communication, a third party steps in without alerting anybody and reads the transfer which is happening. So that can be done using proxies, that can be done using a lot of other tools. And the moment you are able to catch that communication, so suppose A is talking to B and there is a attacker in the middle of it, so he or she can take the traffic which is flowing from A, manipulate it and send it, forward it to B without B being aware, until unless you have digital signatures and other technological controls in place.
Okay, there is one question from the audience for Mr. Debashish. It is from Ajay Chatterjee sir. Developing contingency plans for cybersecurity as per ISM code will involve appropriate training for senior ships personnel and involve shore staff. So how can we have a plan on board without any training in place before 2021. So what is the strategy for this, sir?
Yeah, for training for 2021, the implementation is still not mandatory. The only mandatory now for the ISM is the management plan should be in place. Now all the things, as I said, will be in the pipeline for training, and when the cybersecurity plan and assessment plan, and then review of the plan, and then the audits. These are all going to come soon. But now definitely some companies have already got training programs, and they're already started doing the trainings, and that's what we are doing training programs here with the companies around. So presently now it is not immediately training, and these things will not be looked at. Implementation and not will be looked at. It will be looked at that the cybersecurity management plan is in the manual and in the risk analysis report.
Thank you, sir. I think there are tens of questions coming from the audience. So we will stop the question answer session here, and we will answer all questions over email to all attendees. Now we would like to move on to the poll session. We will have a short poll. The first question is, were the contents relevant to the topic? So you can grade up from 1 to 5. Second question mentions, did the webinar add value for your time? Third question, will you be interested on webinars on operational topics related to ship management and training? And the last question is, how is your overall experience with the webinar? Thank you all for submitting your views. Now I request Mr. Debashish to express vote of thanks to all the dignitaries and all the attendees.
Well, thank you, Kiran. I thank all of you today for spending time with us, and hope it has been a bit informative for you. I thank all the guest speakers. I thank Sean, especially Sean. I thank Commodore Bal, Sunil Kapoor, Rob Cotter, Alok Roy, to give your invaluable time, and it was great to have you here in our show. We are just beginning and trying to do something good for the entire marine fraternity. So thank you very much for your time. Your presence and time is very, very valuable to us. I especially thank all participants being here, and hope to enjoy hope you've enjoyed it. Some of them I can name is Captain Wang, Mr. Wang Gang. He's the CEO of Costco. He is here with us today. He's a very senior person. He's for Costco Europe. He sits in London. Mr. Wang Gang, thank you for coming. And a few other names. Michael is there. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mr. Habib from MCA. Thank you, Satya, Srikanta, Ayushri, Rohit Tandon, Mr. Rajan is here. Steve Blair, ex-ABS, he is here from London. Vishwadeep Banerjee, Abul Ahad from Bangladesh is here. Vijay from Singapore is here. Deva from Hong Kong is there. Mujib, ex-MCA is here. Mr. B.N. Singh is here. Then Ms. Anudya is here, and anyone, Subrata Das, anybody, if I missed out, apologies for that, but I want to thank all of you, so that, and a special thank. This is a special thank from the bottom of my heart to Lumina for a wonderful presentation. And, it sees people are clapping already. So you've done a great job. And nobody, can you believe, we in a week's time, we have discussed, and can you believe she, a week back, didn't know anything about ships. So now she's pinpointing every AIS, every equipment. The present generation is fantastic. I thank you very much for that. And I also thank our moderator, Kiran Thorat, Thank you, alumni, and Kiran, thank you. And I wish you all the best. He's passing out from the Cass Business School in London, doing the Masters in Trade and Finance. I wish him all the luck. And after all, we have to thank the mastermind of Amon board, who's organizing the full thing, Mr. Srinivas Patnaik. Mr.
Thank you.
Srinivas Patnaik, wave to you. So thank you very much. And the entire team of Amon board in Singapore for organizing sort of a seminar which people from all over the world. So thank you once again, and see you next month. Our next month's topic is about challenges in flag state and IMO mandatory audits, the III code. This is happening on the 10th of September next month. And the speakers will be Debashis Mazumdar, which is myself, and Mr. Ojai Chatterjee, who's the ex-chief surveyor, Government of India. And the moderator will be Mr. Kaushik Seal from Singapore ex-DNV. And so we will have an interesting session. Please be with us. And I thank you once again for all of them. Anybody was saying something? Okay, thank you all of you from the bottom of my heart. Thanks for being here today. It was a lovely, lovely evening to see all of you. Over to Kiran to close the webinar, please.
Thank you everyone for joining from near and far. Wherever you are, stay safe and look after yourself and your families. Sooner we will come up with the new webinar and all attendees will be notified by email. Hereby, I declare the end of this webinar. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Kiran. Take
Everybody,
care.
thank you, Debashis. Thank you.
Excellent job, Kiran.
Thank
Excellent job, Debashis.
Thank you. Thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Goodbye. Nice
Bye.
to see you all with a rainbow behind you.
आप लोग 4 लोग बच जाओगे।